Previously on Jake Speaks.
You casually just mentioned a superpower, you being able to relinquish control. And I believe that that is definitely something that a lot of us struggle with. When we have a dream, when we have an aspiration, when we have a goal, this moment that we set our mind to it, we want to get it finished as quickly as possible. And when it doesn't happen, when we pre-planned it to happen, we give up.
Right.
So talk about that superpower of yours, being comfortable relinquishing control, being comfortable going with the flow, not needing to move fast, but wanting to move correctly. How did that come about? Was that always something that you embodied, or was that something that this particular journey or goal that you wanted to set for yourself in Love is a Parable brought that out of you?
That is another loaded question, but I feel like, it's funny I said soup and then you said superpower. I'm just going to play on that. Okay. So my superpower, I would say it's a couple of things. We don't realize how much rejection, betrayal, heartbreak, and pain can actually mature us and teach us. Biologically being the youngest of four, that was a lesson within itself. And then transitioning to being the oldest of five when my adoptive father took me in, life teaches you don't have as much control as you think you do. So the things that you truly value, and this is what Love is a Parable taps into, the things that you truly value, you will protect. I always knew that I was able and capable of doing more. I just didn't know what that more was, but I knew the options that were presented to me wasn't it. Like the whole idea of living life, choosing one profession and doing that for like 40 to 45 years and then retire just never sat well with me. Even when I was actively involved in ministry as a leader, I remember the spiritual leaders telling me, this is what God saw for me. And I was like, I don't see that. And I don't feel like he's telling me that. So Love is a Parable is a product of that resistance to fit in or to assimilate. It was the product of saying like, no, you have to trust your instinct and know what you were created to do and move towards that. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. It's just something in your gut that is telling you, hold on to this and continue to persevere through this.
Check out today. Love as Leadership. Jade Wayne Garnett's blueprint for unity, purpose, and lasting impact.
accident. We're gonna go with the sexual assault. That's the one I'll use. Ed wanted me to heal. Ed wanted me to go to the therapist. Ed wanted me to do it because I loved Ed and because I knew he loved me and only had the best interest for me. He didn't want anything to harm me. I went to therapy for Ed. I didn't go because I felt like I was in that phase of wanting to heal. I went because it was recommended by someone that I knew loved me, that cared for me, that supported me. But that was still the wrong reason for me to seek out support. Because again, by me doing that, the work that I had put in, I almost lost all of it by doing it prematurely because someone else wanted me to do it. This is what I mean. They have to be intentional about their own healing. They can't do it for a loved one or for a friend. They have to do it because they're ready to heal. They're ready to move forward. And just because it's delayed for however long it's delayed does not mean they do not want to heal at all. It just means that they're not ready to address this huge elephant.
Hello everyone. For those of you who are new to my channel, welcome. And for those of you who are subscribed to Jay Speaks, thank you so much and welcome back. As you know, it is my mission, it is my passion to bring to you all conversation topics that are positive, motivational, educational, and informational. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so happy to be here with Florida DeVaul-Dudley, affectionately known as Flo. Flo is the founder of Florida Soars, her life coaching business. Flo understands that everyone has dealt with some form of trauma, and through Florida Soars, she is here to guide anyone through the healing process of their trauma. As for Flo, Flo was molested by a family member at the tender age of 7 years old. As a teenager, assaulted by a pastor. In her early 20s, she experienced date rape, and during her first marriage, both sexual assault and domestic violence. Although hardly any of these incidents were truly resolved, Flo had no choice but to move on. However, during a life-threatening car accident on Labor Day of 2015, Flo experienced PTSD from the accident, causing all suppressed memories and traumas to resurface. Battling and torturing herself tremendously with guilt, shame, substance abuse, suicidal thoughts, and reoccurring flashbacks, the experiences of each assault affected her ability to trust others. Now, in spite of the aforementioned, Flo challenged herself to self-educate herself on all areas of trauma, and more specifically, how her unresolved trauma affected the trajectory of her life. It is now her deepest desires to help anyone who is currently dealing with present and or past traumas because she herself understands what it feels like. Ladies and gentlemen, please sit back, relax, and most importantly, listen. And hopefully after today's episode, you understand for yourself that healing doesn't mean pretending that our most agonizing moments never happened. Rather, we must choose to acknowledge those moments and move forward with hope and growth. So, Florida DeVaul-Dudley, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm excited. I'm excited. It's been a little bit of time since we last met in person.
Yeah, last year.
Last year, at the tail end of the year. Was
Yes.
it December?
December at your speaking engagement at DNS. I think that was the last time.
What about the Shining Light in Darkness?
Yes, the Glow of Grace for Durham. That was the last event in October. So it's even longer. I was saying December. Okay.
October, but we're here.
We're here, yes.
How is
2025.
2025. How is 2025 going for you so far?
It's going well. I'm expecting this to be the year of greater, and greater in every area of my life, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially, relationally. Yeah. How about
Awesome.
you?
So far, so good.
Okay.
Just trying to stay the course with Jay Speaks and get as many stories out to the world as possible. So as far as that's concerned, looking pretty good.
Okay.
I noticed a trend with my interviewees. They say that normally odd years stand out from the rest. Is that something that you can relate to?
So because I like odd numbers, yes.
Yes.
Versus even numbers. So 7, that's biblically say that it's completion. 8, new beginning. 9, because if you add 20, 25 together, you get 9. It's like a year of justice, prosperity, etc. So yeah, I'm all for the odd numbers, odd years.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I hope this year is everything you wish for and more.
Thank you.
So, well, before we officially get started, I would definitely like to take this opportunity for you to more formally introduce yourself to our audience, our virtual audience.
Okay.
Please share a little bit about yourself. Who is Florida DeVaul-Dudley? And also, feel free to spell out and talk about your past and how your unresolved traumas got you to where you are today.
Absolutely. Well, I am Florida DeVaul-Dudley. I go by Flo with close acquaintance, and I go by Miss DD with my students. So Florida DeVaul-Dudley is first and foremost a wife, a mother, an educator, a daughter, a sister, aunt.
Wow.
The very thing I take pride in more than any of those names, a nana. My grandbabies, that's the name that they gave me. So all of the other things I can list about who I am, I like to end it with that nana, because my grandbabies, they bring me so much joy, and to hear their voice to say nana, and yeah, to see them light up when they say it, is who I am. My trauma is who I am, and my trauma has made me into the resilient woman that I am today. Had it not been for my trauma, I can't honestly say that I would know who I would be today. All because of my trauma, I am who I am today. I am the person that I am regarding being in a service profession, and starting a nonprofit, starting a coaching business. It all stemmed from my trauma. But starting a business is nothing new from me, because I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So it's just in our genes to do it. But I was the very first one to start a nonprofit, and I wasn't intentionally trying to start a nonprofit, but in obedience to what God was telling me to do, I started the nonprofit which is called Shining Light in Darkness. And Shining Light in Darkness, it stemmed from childhood trauma, young adult trauma, mid-adult trauma that I experienced. Sexual assault when I was 7 years old, and then in my early 20s, I experienced date rape and domestic violence, and then in my previous relationship with my previous partner, I experienced both domestic violence and sexual assault at the hands of him. And because of my trauma, Hence is why Florida SOARS exists. Hence is why Florida DeVaul-Dudley exists, because all three of those entities, they exist because of my trauma, but they correlate together, but they're different because certain things I couldn't do with Shining Light and Darkness, and I can't do with Florida SOARS, but everything that I desire to do and more I can do with Florida DeVaul-Dudley, who I am, Flo. I can do a lot with it. And with that, I will talk about Florida SOARS. Florida SOARS, that focuses on helping individuals overcoming traumatic experiences. I have multiple certifications in it. I don't care about the titles. That doesn't mean anything to me, but I am equipped to do the job. People like to see that you're capable and you can do what you profess you can do. So I feel like the educational component of Florida SOARS, with me making sure that I am capable of doing what I need to do to help other individuals to overcome their similar traumas and other traumas that we would deal with in life. I make sure that I do that, but my lived experience is the best lesson and the best guidance for me with Florida SOARS. It's a coaching, counseling business where I help individuals overcome whatever their traumatic experience is. They can go to my website to see what type of services I provide, because that's not important, but it's part of the journey. Whereas with the actual business, Florida SOARS, I'm limited as to how far I can go as well. But with Florida DeVaul-Dudley, who I am, both of those businesses, Shining Light and Darkness and Florida SOARS, is birthed from Florida DeVaul-Dudley. And Florida DeVaul-Dudley is a wife, a mother, entrepreneur, a minister, a counselor, a mentor. And I use my spiritual beliefs with Florida DeVaul-Dudley, and I experience more freedom with Florida DeVaul-Dudley because of my childhood trauma. My faith is what sustained me and helped me get through the most traumatic and hardest time of my life. And people say it's Pandora's box and all of these different things to describe how bad a situation is. But it's not a Pandora's box. It's your box that's been opened that you didn't intend on opening, because had I not had that bad car experience in 2015, I don't believe to this day that I would fully have dealt with my unresolved trauma. But because of that, those suppressed childhood memories at 7 years old, they resurface on top of the new traumatic injuries that I sustained, life-threatening injuries that I sustained during that time. And so I know that everybody have their way of dealing with things. And for me, the beginning process of addressing and dealing with my trauma started with my faith, my foundation that was set for me when I was a small child.
Wow. So in your response, I noticed that you attributed your past to being resilient. Mm-hmm. And also you've attributed your past traumatic experiences to your newfound faith. Not newfound, but
mm-hmm. My foundation.
Your foundation.
Because I truly believe that if I did not have that solid foundation as a child growing up in a family that believed in God, believed in Jesus Christ, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, and having those principles ingrained in me, I don't think we would be having this conversation at all, because I know even being as resilient as I am to this day, I still had those suicidal ideations, and I used unhealthy coping mechanism to address and deal with my trauma. But ultimately, it was my relationship with God, getting back to my roots and what I was told to do in regards to starting Shining Light in Darkness, because that was the first organization that I started out of my pain. Out of my pain came my purpose. And that purpose, Shining Light in Darkness, was birthed. Shining Light in Darkness, it addresses underserved victims and survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence. Even though we service everyone, but we make sure the vulnerable population, the unseen population is taken care of. And then going to Florida Soars, I offer those services, but when you're a business and everybody doesn't have your same spiritual beliefs and your belief system, so what you believe, you have to set that aside because it's a business. And in that business, I continue to operate in that capacity, letting the services speak for themselves. But at the same time, Florida, DeVaul-Dudley, I can let my faith lead me where I have more clarity, more guidance, more structure, because when everything else fails, my faith is something that I can count on to guide me through some of the darkest and stormy times in my life.
So are you truly, I just want to make sure that I'm receiving this correctly. Are you truly glad that your traumatic experiences happened? Because I think you said that in the beginning. You said that you're happy that it all happened because it made you into the person that you are today. So you wouldn't have it any different way?
So I'm not happy that I had to experience this.
Just trying to clear it out.
Not at all. But you know what? If I had the opportunity to do anything over, I wouldn't do not one single thing. Because if I change one single thing in my life it will alter my present, my right here and now. It would even possibly exclude my family that I have to this day, that was a very purposeful, meaningful relationship that helped me get through my healing journey of sexual assault, the molestation, because it wasn't the domestic violence with me almost dying at the hand of my first partner. That wasn't what took me for the ringer. In my mind, trying to comprehend and understand the most traumatic thing in my life, I'm thinking, okay, because this man almost killed me, this is the most traumatic thing in my life. But that was not the case. The most traumatic thing for me in my life that I had not resolved was being molested at 7 years old. And so being molested at 7 years old, when I tried to tell someone about what happened to me at 7 years old, I was shunned away. And I was taught that if something bad happens to you, you go and tell another adult. So after I was assaulted that morning and I went to school, I immediately went to school and I told my first grade teacher what happened to me. And she looked at me as if I said something wrong. And so her exact words to me, "What did you say?" And because of how stern she was and how she looked at me, I was like, nothing. And I internalized it from that moment on. And because of that moment, it caused me to want to be in professions where I can help others without sharing my story. Because prior to Shining Light in Darkness, I never truly shared my story. And when God told me to start Shining Light in Darkness, I may have just told my mom 2 to 3 years ago about the molestation because she had no idea about it. So to sit up here and broadcast my personal and most intimate stuff, my mess that I didn't want to share with the world, I refused to do it. But I submitted to God's will and I started it. And as painful as it was for me to do it, now mind you, I started the foundation and I hadn't healed. So I am recovering from being partially paralyzed, lacerated liver, a laundry bags of medication, getting injections in my neck because of missing cartilage, going through physical therapy, all of this. So I'm trying to heal my physical body from this accident. But then the accident injuries, they did have an impact on me, but it was those silent memories up there mentally that I was dealing with from the molestation that I was trying to deal with as best as I could. As like the past, I was able to not deal with it from whatever year that was back in the 80s in first grade. And I tried to push it back in a shell after the car accident in 2015. Unsuccessful. And I battled my own demons with it. I had restless nights, sleepless nights. When I say sleepless, I did not sleep. And they tell you after like 72 hours without sleep, you'll go crazy. So what could drive a sane man crazy is what kept me sane. It's crazy, but I started educating myself since I couldn't sleep about what was going on with me. And so when I started educating myself about my traumatic event and all that it entailed, from childhood, from that moment at school, not the actual incident itself, because yes, the incident itself caused the traumatic experience, but what really shut me down and silenced me was my teacher, my first grade teacher. And so she caused me to suffer in silence. And she didn't support me. She looked at me as if I was just like not supposed to say this because I blurted it out. My uncle put his so-and-so penis, pee-pee, inside me. That's exactly how I said it. It wasn't no type of proper terminology during that time when I was growing up that you tell adult if you're being touched inappropriately during that time, like they have now. They have classes that they have other people to come in, other organizations, businesses, to come into elementary schools and tell them, okay, you have your healthy touch, you have your inappropriate touch. The only thing that was close to that when I was growing up was the pill that they would give you going to the dentist, the fluoride pill, that if you had tartar buildup or plaque on your teeth, it will turn red. And if you didn't, your teeth would stay the same. My teeth stayed the same. The buildup that I had, it was invisible because I had to push it to the side and continue to live my life like it didn't happen.
So have you reconciled with that uncle?
So have I reconciled with him? I will simply say that within myself, I have, because where I'm at in my life is through that process of healing and understanding stuff about me and how I was handling stuff from that little 7-year-old all the way up to adulthood. I reconcile with myself. And in reconciling with myself, forgiving myself, knowing that my innocence was stolen, I didn't give it, I didn't do anything, it wasn't my fault. I have reconciled with my uncle. Have I gotten an apology or anything like that? No, not at all. Am I looking for that? Absolutely not. Because at the end of the day, the only person that took away my power when I was a child was that teacher, my first grade teacher. Because of her silencing me, she silenced my voice where I couldn't even share it with my mom. And so I continued to take that garbage with me for years. Scientifically and medically, they tell you that for one trauma, it takes anywhere from 1.5 years to possibly 2.5 years to heal from. Imagine having a trauma happening to you at 7 years old and you're almost 50 and you never reconcile with that trauma. So, hey, 43 years, that's 86 years worth of healing that technically I'm supposed to have done in order to heal and move forward and to do the work that I do and to hear the horrific stories. So hence is why I've reconciled with myself in order to do the work that I do. Going back to your question about me liking what I experienced, absolutely not. But I understand that it's a cliche, and some people will agree with it, some people will not. I totally don't like it. I won't say I don't agree with it, because God truly knows how much we all can stand and endure. So with my pain, with my trauma, with all of the other traumatic things that I've dealt with in my life, God hand chosen me as one of his strongest warriors, not soldiers, because you have to understand how strong you are, because understanding how strong you are in some of these dark situation is all that you have in order to maintain that resilience. So with me knowing who I am and whose I am, I'm able to stand these battles and wars that are being thrown at me. And when I get over one thing, there's always another event that's traumatic, be it health scare, saying that I have breast cancer in both breasts, having issues with my children, specifically one of my daughters being incarcerated. So it's just a lot of stuff that I never thought I would endure in my life. And as a mother, let me back up. I used to be a cop, and this is gonna sound crazy. And I know that females get locked up, females go to jail. But while I was a cop, it was always guys that I was arresting. And so to be in this situation where I had a daughter incarcerated, and to see how law enforcement treated her, and I know how law enforcement is supposed to treat your child, that was another traumatic experience that I was not equipped to deal with or able to comprehend the totality of it. But having firsthand experience of it, I understand it on a whole different level that I never would have ever understood. And again, that's why I say God, he knows how much we can bear. And my word is resilience. I am a woman of resilience. I'm a woman of faith that will not allow any situation or any circumstance to overtake me, overpower me. I know traumatic experiences, we go through different levels of grief especially with my daughter, it was just like I went through the different phases of grief because I lost my daughter. I didn't lose her to death, but she was taken from me, and it wasn't something I was prepared for. So not being prepared is harder to process things as being prepared. Like I'll use today as an example. I wanted to be prepared today to be able to just throw out different things to you in regards to traumatic experiences and all of that to adequately prepare for it. But at the same time, if I was adequately prepared for it, it wouldn't be authentic. It wouldn't be genuine. The conversation would seem like more of script, whereas we're having a genuine conversation about my real life traumatic experiences as to who Florida DeVaul-Dudley is, who I am today, how I move today, how I operate today. I operate in faith. I can do that by being Florida DeVaul-Dudley. I'm not restricted in any kind of way. With Florida DeVaul-Dudley, I can be even more transparent and vulnerable to a lot of other people that are dealing with a lot of other traumatic situations that want to deal with Florida DeVaul-Dudley in that spiritual component, that spiritual concept, and not excluding it, because at the end of the day, you have to have some type of belief system, whether you're Christian, Jew, Muslim, it doesn't matter, because you have a belief system. You believe in something. And in order to believe in something, you have to trust it. You have to have hope. And so with me, this is who Florida DeVaul-Dudley is. I believe in Florida DeVaul-Dudley. I know that there is a future. I know that there is a hope. I know that the plans that God has for me is far greater than Florida Soars and Shining Light in Darkness. Am I grateful for those entities? Absolutely. I'm grateful for Durham Nativity School as an educator, but I am even more grateful to this day for Florida DeVaul-Dudley because of my faith. It shows me, it gives me the red flags of things that are to come. Some say a premonition, some say a seer, some say prophecy, prophetess, whatever the word that they choose. But I know it's my faith that guides me in the next journey of my life and help me stay focused and continue to be able to deal with my own traumatic stuff, because every day is not a good day. And with me knowing who I am, I can identify my triggers as to what would cause me to relapse going back to Shining Light in Darkness, what could cause me to relapse going back to Florida Soars, as to why I started it. Because Florida Soars, it was off of Shining Light in Darkness because the survivors couldn't afford to pay for it. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just do it pro bono and I'll help them in their healing journey. But I realized that in those healing journeys, people don't value things that are free. And so in everything that I do now, I get a return of investment, ROI, because I know my worth. Hence is why Florida DeVaul-Dudley exists, because I will not allow anybody to diminish my value whatsoever. Credentials, yes, I have them, but I don't care about the credentials. I care about the people that come to me to move to the next phase of their life, to enjoy life to the fullest in all of the goodness that's awaiting them. I can do that with Florida DeVaul-Dudley because Florida DeVaul-Dudley can be more transparent than Florida Soars, because I have to be restricted. Shining Light in Darkness, I have to be restricted. But in being restricted, I will definitely say this. Just because I'm restricted, I stay true to our core value. I will not sell Shining Light in Darkness, Florida Soars short of anything, because both of those organizations offers an extreme amount of value to the people that it serves. 100% wholeheartedly.
Wow. So let's take a little step back just a little bit. What is your definition of trauma?
Oh, so there is, for me, I will just simply say, not even going off of anybody else's definition, trauma is something that causes you to be in a dark place where you don't see a light. You see no tunnel. You see no way of escape, as a Cliff Note version for how I define trauma. Trauma is a dark place. Trauma is a hopeless place. Trauma is, especially if you operate in silence, is a deadly place.
And how could something be so widespread but also so misunderstood?
Easy. Everybody, some shape, form, and fashion in their life have dealt with trauma. And like I said, I may help individuals that's dealing with trauma or traumatic experiences, but just because I'm helping them and I experienced it, that doesn't mean that they're experiencing the same trauma the way that I experienced it. Everybody will experience some form of trauma, but that doesn't mean that it's the same for everybody. It's not a linear thing when it comes to trauma. Trauma affects young and old. It does not discriminate, because people don't even realize that they have trauma until they start to have conversation, meaningful conversations with individuals that they trust with some of their most intimate things in their lives, to offer guidance and clarity to it. And once a person trusts you to that degree and you talk to them and you truly be that friend or that support system for them, you can help them recognize and see, okay, this was a traumatic experience. Granted, you didn't view it as this way growing up, or you didn't see it this way as a teenager. You didn't view it this way as an adult or in this relationship. But now, because of understanding, that's why, lack of understanding, people, traumatic events, trauma, it's a taboo, especially when it comes to sexual assault, domestic violence. That's something that people still do not want to touch, because that's an ugly situation that's been going on forever. But because of people lack of understanding, hence this is why they don't understand that it's a traumatic experience or they're experiencing trauma, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. And listening to your response, I do agree. I do agree that we all have dealt with trauma, and we will inevitably deal with trauma. And the reason why that I also believe that as well too, I'm no doctor,
Okay.
but I could confidently say that I do believe that trauma is also transferred through DNA. Genetics. If a parent has trauma or experienced trauma, that when they give birth,
So,
because
from the scientific community, I definitely agree with you. But for me, with trauma, I'll agree with you. I'll say I agree with you, because it could be something that's perpetuated, even not being related to genetics, but just because of the environment. And that goes back to the family value and what they say. Some children live what they see and see what they live, but it's not always true, but in most cases it is.
And speaking of that, some people live what they see but not necessarily see what they live. How could two people experience the same traumatic experience but turn out differently. For example, like you can have brother, sister, or just any type of siblings being raised in a household, I don't know, father beats mother, and they see that on a regular basis. However, let's just say the boy ends up being a batterer to his wife, and then the daughter ends up being someone like you.
Okay.
And, you know, trying to help people get out of this. How does that work?
So for the individuals that does not perpetuate that cycle of traumatic experiences, it's a choice. They choose not to become a product of their environment. It's just like being molested, male or female, being molested for a prolonged period of time. And as they get older, they start doing the same identical thing because of what was done to them. So initially they were the victims, but they now have become the perp of the very thing that they said that was horrific for them. Was it intentional? I don't think so. Me personally, I don't think that it's intentional, but because of that cycle, and when you are hush hush and it's not talked about, so they think that this is okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. But again, going back to me with my healing is educating myself. I literally read books and just did a lot of research from how I love horror movies to why I think the way that I think. And because I have a heart for people, and my foundation, I will never discount my foundation of my family as to how I was raised. And even with what happened to me, I had a choice. I could have stayed in that situation and continued to be abused, and as I got older, chose to do the same thing. But because I knew how it made me feel, there was no amount of reasoning that I could make myself believe to say that it was okay to do the same thing to someone else when I know how it made me feel mentally, physically, emotionally. Now, spiritually, that comes into play with my domestic violence issue. When I was given erroneous guidance from a previous pastor telling me to stay in an abusive relationship where there was evidence of domestic violence. And I'm not gonna dive into that because it's irrelevant, but it's tying into this situation right here, this conversation. If I held on to that pain and that hurt, I would have stunted my own spiritual growth. And as I was trying to heal from my traumatic experiences because of my foundation, because of the erroneous guidance, I would have failed tremendously in my healing because of unresolved issues of what a previous pastor told me to do when it wasn't under the guise of God. It wasn't under the wisdom of God, but this was truly of self, not inspired by God. And between domestic violence, sexual assault, could I have perpetuated that? Absolutely. But I made the choice that instead of perpetuating that cycle, I was going to do something about it. Hence is why I started in law enforcement. Protect and serve your community. Whatever I needed to do to help protect the community and to make them feel safer, that's what I wanted to do. I did not want to be a perp. I did not want to violate anyone. I didn't want to manipulate anyone, because these are all traits of people that choose to walk down those paths of repeating that same cycle of unhealthy, traumatic experiences, unresolved. traumatic experiences, and they feel the need that they need to go one step farther and start doing the same thing. I don't condone that at all. There is no amount of pain or hurt for me to say that that's okay. For someone else to cause the same hurt, pain, and traumatic experiences to someone else.
So your experiences made you empathetic?
No, I've always been a caring person. My experiences just really made me more aware of the world, because prior to moving here in 2016, I was asked to be on this panel with this organization. And so I was on the panel, Ed and I, and it was another lady that was on the panel with me. And when she shared her molestation as a child, she was 5 years old. It was just like, I thought I was the only one dealing with this. I didn't know other people went through this. This is how this subject, this traumatic subject about molestation, sexual assault, goes unspoken in Black communities, and how it's just pushed to the side and saying God will take care of all of this and etc. But when I heard her say that, it brought me to tears, because that was my first time ever hearing another human being and female share the same identical story about it. And I was like, I thought I was by myself. Nobody, from being a child even to an adult, outside of moving here in 2016, that was my first time ever hearing of the story that was so close to mine. Here we go again. Her story was so close to mine, but that was her own traumatic experience. And my traumatic experience, I could relate to it, but it was my traumatic experience. And even though they're similar, but we both dealt with them in different ways, because she also has an organization to help individuals of sexual assault and sexual assault, and she used art. She used the arts as her way of healing. I use educating myself as a way of healing, because traditional therapy didn't work for me. It literally almost caused me to relapse. The years of hard work and effort and dedication that I put into my healing, that therapist almost caused me to lose it in 2 sessions. Hence is why I always say everybody heals differently. You can't tell anybody how to heal. You can provide the resources and the tools that they need to aid them in healing, but you can't force or make someone heal in a way that's not healthy or conducive to their healing journey.
And speaking about healing and healing journey, in the midst of you trying to heal through the plethora of experiences that you unfortunately went through, like you said in the beginning, you were battling with grief, substance abuse, shame, suicidal thoughts, reoccurring flashbacks. Talk about being controlled by your trauma.
I am like a person that has to be in control. Ed, he always say that that's the cop in me. I have to have things my way. But no, it's just how I was raised. And not that I came from a single family home. I came from a 2-parent home. But my mom, she was my inspiration. And I saw my mom and her leaving a high paying job to take a lower paying job because God told her to leave this job. She didn't understand why she had to leave this job because it was a 2-parent home. The incomes was taking care of the family, XYZ. But her mom got sick in 1991. And when she got sick, she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Hence again, another traumatic thing, because grief, that is a traumatic experience, especially when you're young and you don't fully understand and someone you love is taken away from you and you see your parents in pain and just not who they are that we know them to be as parents, and to see that part of them, it was a lot. But at the same time, because of her, and she's a woman of faith just as I am, and so with her leaving her job to take a lower paying job as a teacher's aide, she said, Lord, you know that I have a family and we have our responsibilities. You have to give me something to do to provide for my family, just like that. And in that statement of faith, of her trusting God, not only did God provide, and she was able to be there with her mom going through the cancer and everything, taking her back and forth. And when she listened to God, the doctor gave her mom 6 months to live. So again, obedience, listening. She started her tax business. Not only that, she started her florist. Not only that, she had her, I forget the name of her drapery business, but she started making draperies for people. And as she's doing this, my sister, brother, and I, we're right there with her. We're ironing the curtains and the dresses. God gifted her hands to make money for her and provide for her family on top of my dad's income. So this is why I look up to my mom as a woman that endured a lot, and she kept a lot of stuff inside as well, because how I shared it with her was not, I never intended on sharing with her about my traumatic experiences. And I shared with her because it was a conversation that we were having. And I was like, this is what happened. I was date raped. And then after that, I was also molested by so-and-so at 7. She had no idea. Everybody is dealing with something, some traumatic event that happened in their life. And my mom, she had her issues, unresolved issues that she was dealing with of her own, that I found out about just by sharing what happened to me. And so people would say they would blame their mom. I never blame my mom, because I know my mom loved me, and she still loves me to this day. When you come from a close-knit family, the farthest thing from your mind is that my brother, my sister, or anybody in the family is going to do this to my child. No parent would ever think that, but it happens. And at the same time, like I told her, I don't blame you. So I don't even want you to even go through that, because it's not even about that. Hence, all service business to help people. Being a cop, it was this one case that I worked where it was this 5 to 7 year old little girl that had a learning disability, that came into the department because CPS got involved in all of that. And the mom had to bring her to the police department to file a report. She files a report. I did my due diligence to make sure that, because I know I was molested and I refused to not do my part to help this young girl in it. Long story short, the criminal justice system is not as lenient as it was during that time when I was an officer, because even after a parent dropped the charges, the law enforcement had an obligation to continue to pursue the charges against that which was her boyfriend, and the mom didn't believe her daughter. Hence, that little girl stayed in that environment with the same person that violated her. And I was livid. I hated it, but I couldn't do anything about it. But I will always do as much as I can to help individuals suffering from traumatic experiences, not just sexual assault or domestic violence, but from grief. Grief. That one, when I did that one, I never thought that I would have to use those steps for myself to process my traumatic experiences with the situation that happened to my daughter, because this was like last year during Mother's Day that I started going through those stages of grief. It was Mother's Day 2024, and of course, my daughter is part of the reason why I celebrate Mother's Day. But to not have her here, I'd never had that experience in my life. And I'm trying to figure out what's going on with me while I'm allowing my emotions to process, to understand what's really going on. And because of the traumatic experiences and everything, I lost my voice for an entire month from unresolved trauma that I did not deal with properly. I was allowing that situation to overtake me. And that's one thing that I refuse to do, because like I said, I like to be in control, not allowing my trauma or my traumatic experiences to control me. Because once I give those situations, be it whatever those names could be, it controls who I am, how I operate, how I move, and what I do, how I do it, and become fearful. And that's not who I am. I was that way only once, and that was from that 2015 car accident, trying to deal with those unresolved traumatic experiences as a child. So as far as me giving any other power, any other control to any other thing or situation or force over my life, no, I take it all back. And I had to come back to my senses with the situation with my daughter. And even though it wasn't easy, but I recognized what was happening with me. Again, not that I ever wanted to experience any of these lived experiences with these different traumatic experiences that I've experienced. I had a friend, and I love her dearly. She's a photographer. Her name is Marlena. And she was like, "You're the trauma woman." And she was like, "But it's not how people think." She said, "You're that woman." She said, "Trauma, it's strike through. So you're no longer operating in trauma. You're that woman that can help these other women get through their traumatic experiences." And I was like, yeah, I said, I like that. And then, of course, how men and women think are completely different. So I was talking to this gentleman, and he was asking me questions about my situation. And I explained to him XYZ, and he was like, his words were, we're not focusing on trauma because trauma is not our focus. And when he said that, I had to take a step back because it was like I had offended him with my resilience and how I can talk about my traumatic experiences regardless to how it makes someone feel, because I'm unapologetic about my healing. I worked too hard, too long for my healing, and for me not to freely talk about how I overcame my traumatic experiences to appease you or any other person. Again, I will not compromise for anyone about me being Florida DeVaul-Dudley. I owned everything that I've experienced in my life, and I am the author of my life. I create the stories that I want told in my life. I don't allow other people to tell my story or tell me how to tell my story or to tell me what part to tell of my story and to say it's linear. This is what we're going to stick to. No, you're not me. If you don't want Florida DeVaul-Dudley, you don't get Florida Soars. Point blank, because Florida Soars exists off of my traumatic experiences. Shining Light in Darkness exists off of my traumatic experiences. Because of my traumatic experiences, we are helping people that we never thought, let me rephrase it, that I thought I never would have helped, because I felt like I was selling myself short by helping strangers. I felt like I was an imposter because I wasn't helping my family members that I knew that was dealing with their traumatic experiences. And so Ed, he was talking to this therapist because for Shining Light in Darkness, we were interviewing therapists to help our clients. And so she asked me, what do I want to get from Shining Light in Darkness? What is my ultimate goal? And I was like, I want to help my family. I want them to get to the other side, just like me. And she was like, what makes you think you haven't already done? And she caused me to pause. I'll never forget, because we were taking our youngest daughter for her freshman orientation at UNCG. And we were in the parking deck. And I sat in the car. It was her and my other daughter and Ed. Tears start rolling down my face because I'm replaying my family members that have called me and told me how proud they are of me because of me using my voice and doing something with my pain, not just being silent. And then I used to be a pharmacy tech. I also worked in healthcare. So again, the helping profession, I'm always of service. I'm gonna give back one way or another. I will never take. I've never been a taker. I've always been a giver. I will be a giver until the day that I die. And so I was able to tell family members different medication to ask their doctor or their therapist to write out for them so that they could rest. And at that moment, I knew not only was I adding value to strangers that I didn't know, but I was adding value to my family, the ultimate thing that I wanted to do. And so because of recognizing that, I was able to move forward with more resilience, with shining light in darkness, not give in to Ed and I funding it, starting off. Thank God for the funding now, but it didn't matter at that time. I knew what the vision was, what God gave me for Shining Light in Darkness, because it was far greater than myself or Ed. And so now I'm seeing it come to fruition. Shining light in darkness is to be that light in darkness. And that's going back to you asking what was trauma? Darkness. And if I can be that light to just one person to get them out of that traumatic experience situation, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Because at the end of the day, I can only work with the people who want to work with me, and that is completely intentional about their healing, not talking about it, but intentionally about their healing journey to move forward, to get to that other side of light out of darkness. Because once you get into the light, where darkness is, it cannot exist with light. And hence, again, Florida DeVaul-Dudley, I am her. I am that woman that is unapologetically she, because my name is a ray of light in itself. It took me a long time to like grasp hold of to how intentional God was about creating me and the experiences in life that I would endure and what I would go through. Because whether in some of these tumultuous storms, I'm Florida. Florida, people love to go to Florida, not because it's rainy or that it's cold or they don't know what to expect. They go there for the sunshine, that ray of sunshine. And Florida, that's who I am. That's what I radiate. It's not pretend, it's just who I am, who I was created to be. I am that flower that's blossoming even more, that stayed in darkness for a little while, but in darkness, the seed grows. And so as those seeds were growing in that darkness, growing and growing, here I am, Florida DeVaul-Dudley, loving every bit of who I am, unapologetic. Because through my traumatic experiences, you can see my tattoos. My tattoos is part of my healing journey. I was a clean slate. Going back to healing, how everybody heals from their traumatic experiences is different. For me, in my healing journey, when I got my tattoos, it tells a story. And in this story is how it's going to be written in my book. Because every intricate piece by piece, every detail, even the number 9, it's 2025. I told you I love the number 9. It's here. So when I know who I am right here, even if I feel like I'm getting lost, all I have to do is look at that compass. I'll never get lost again. I will never lose myself in any situation. I will not allow myself to be lost, because I work too hard to find myself and who I am in those experiences. And then also, the one that I love here is time. Time stands still for no one. You use time appropriately and most beneficial to you, not anybody else, but to you, because time is something that you can never get back. And I lost a lot of time because of that unresolved trauma. And because of that unresolved trauma, I had some unhealthy relationships. And I will never get lost or lose time like that ever again in any situation. Before I lose time or get lost, I'll walk away from it, because I know who I am. And can't nobody tell me anything less, period.
Wow. Well, listening to your response, you're definitely someone who's self-determined and steadfast when it comes to wanting to heal.
Absolutely.
You don't wait to heal, you want to heal. You seek it out.
Yes.
So my response to you is, or my question to you is, how do you help somebody, or how would you suggest someone to help a loved one or a friend who has experienced trauma to find some healing or go through a similar journey that you'd went through deliberately if they don't want to?
So when it comes to people healing from their traumatic experiences, no one can force or persuade anyone to heal. The person that's going through that experience must want to experience healing, must want to be freed from that bondage, that darkness. And until they get to that point, this is why I say intentional healing. Until they're ready to heal, be it a loved one, close friend, significant other, they can do all that they know how to do that's best for that individual. But if that individual is not ready to heal, it will not happen. But how you can support them, now supporting them, you can listen to them. Because in every story that they say, I'm just kidding, I'm just joking, there is some truth to it. And a lot of people discount it because people say, I'm just joking, I'm just kidding. No, you have to not only listen, but you have to be intentional with your listening, not listening to respond or to just give them commentary about them. Because when you care about someone, you're going to listen to hear them. And if it's meant for you to say something to them in that space regarding their situation, you will be able to say exactly what it is that they need to hear at that appropriate time. But if you respond out of self when they're trying to share, you're going to cause them to go back into their shell and not open up for another 6 months or a year to someone else that they feel like they can trust. They thought they could trust you. This is why they took those baby steps and opened up with you gradually. It's a slow process. So just like a baby has a process from being in the mother's womb, I'll use that same analogy with anyone dealing with a traumatic experience. When a woman is carrying a child, that child does not know night from day. All they know is the darkness that's being carried within the mommy's belly. And they're connected to the mom's umbilical cord to get the substance that they need in order to stay alive and come into this world. So the same way that we women nurture a baby inside, taking the vitamins and all of that, the vitamin that one would need would be that true support, where you're listening intentionally and you genuinely care about their healing. And when you care about their healing, you don't have to say it because it will radiate. It will resonate with an individual that's going through that dark phase in their life where they know, okay, I know that this person cares for me, so I can go a little bit farther. And then after that, once that 9 to 10 months is over with, the baby is born. And once that baby is born, you go from 0 to 12 months. And in those 0 to 12 months, you start off with milk. Then you gradually eat solid food. And then you go on through those different little phases. It's the same way when it's someone you love and that you care about. You have to be patient with them. Let them take those baby steps that they need to heal the way that they need to heal, not how you want them to heal. And that's where a lot of people make a huge mistake. They want people to heal the way that they think or perceive that they should be healing. No, again, trauma is not linear. Just because you may have experienced it, you're not experiencing it to the degree that this individual may be experiencing trauma. So hold their hand just like you do with a baby. Support them, encourage them. And after that, the baby goes through those different stages, now from an infant to a toddler to adolescence to a teenager to a young adult to an adult. That's how I would describe someone supporting a friend or a loved one. Be patient, because it doesn't happen overnight. Healing does not work like that. And if healing worked like that, so many people would be in such a better space than where we're at right now in the world that we live in. But because there's not a magic pill, magic healing pill for anyone, you just have to be patient, be loving, be kind. One thing that you said about my traumatic experience is that it made me empathetic. That's what they also need to be with their loved one or friend, empathetic. Because if you're judgmental, that takes away everything that was initially done.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Especially when you said listening to hear and understand versus listening to respond. I have definitely struggled with that in the past. I definitely want to, get my thoughts out on a situation, but I've learned that, and I've taught myself that. I've seen the value through that, so I'm sure the same value also resonates in this situation. Now, I also want to talk about the first part of your response when you said, if somebody wants to heal, they have to be intentional. Yes. They can't rely on outside forces to make them heal. It has to start with the person.
Absolutely.
So I'm not trying to sound ignorant. I'm just rolling out the question. Most of the time, when somebody experiences a serious traumatic instance, such as yours, not yours, unfortunately, they find themselves in subsequent instances. Is that a testament because they don't want to heal? Like, what is that? Why, when somebody, again, I'm not trying to sound ignorant, why, when somebody goes through something so traumatizing, you would think that, wow, I'm shocked. This has totally distorted my perception of life. But 9 times out of 10, when a woman is with an abusive boyfriend or a husband,
at least 7 times, 7 attempts before she actually leaves.
7 attempts. So is that, judging by your response, does that mean, within those 7 attempts, she does not want to heal?
Absolutely not. So I will answer that question only using myself as an example. With my accident, we're going to go with the sexual assault. That's the one I'll use. Ed wanted me to heal. Ed wanted me to go to the therapist. Oh, yeah. Ed wanted me to do it because I loved Ed and because I knew he loved me and only had the best interest for me. He didn't want anything to harm me. I went to therapy for Ed. I didn't go because I felt like I was in that phase of wanting to heal. I went because it was recommended by someone that I knew loved me, that cared for me, that supported me. But that was still the wrong reason for me to seek out support. Because again, by me doing that, the work that I had put in, I almost lost all of it by doing it prematurely because someone else wanted me to do it. This is what I mean. They have to be intentional about their own healing. They can't do it for a loved one or for a friend. They have to do it because they're ready to heal. They're ready to move forward. And just because it's delayed for however long it's delayed, does not mean they do not want to heal at all. It's just mean that they're not ready to address this huge elephant because.
But sometimes, I don't mean to cut you off, but sometimes, or most times, people gravitate to what they're comfortable.
I didn't.
You didn't, and I
did.
applaud you for that. But most people gravitate to what they're comfortable. For example, I mean, you hear stories all the time of a woman in an abusive relationship finds a good man. The good man is boring. Goes back to a similar situation. I'm just, again.
So it's funny that you said this. I was talking to a friend on Friday night about this very thing, and it's not because they don't want to, it's because they don't know how to.
And because they don't know how, they go back to what they're comfortable.
It's not going back, because if you look at a person that gets out of an abusive situation, they get out of an abusive situation, but then they find themselves in another abusive situation. Not because they deliberately went out there and was looking for someone with the same tendencies. It was because they operated prematurely. I would rather for an individual to stay not in a toxic situation, not in an abusive situation. We're just talking about trauma now. If they are not fully ready to heal, don't mess with it. Because my reason for that is because there were multiple times that I attempted to heal and I failed tremendously. And this is even while with Shining Light in Darkness. I would be in bed for a month. I would be in bed for weeks. Then it slowly went down to days. And gradually, I'm not in bed anymore. It's a process. If you want to start, my recommendation is to self-educate yourself about, okay, if you're going through grief, the loss of a parent, a child, or even a pet, because a pet is like some people's children, or if you are going through the traumatic experience of having a child incarcerated, or you're experiencing a horrible medical diagnosis of cancer. Again, traumatic experiences that I can speak on, and I can recommend to educate yourself about either one of those subjects before you just make the leap and say, okay, I'm gonna go on my healing journey. Just like you can't quit certain drugs cold turkey or stop drinking alcoholic beverages, well, alcohol, substance abuse, cold turkey. There are few people that can do it like I was able to do it with my situation, but everybody is not as resilient. So what I was able to do and what others were able to do were them. And just because they were able to do it, it doesn't negate the fact that you're able to do it. You're probably not able to do it right now, but take the first step in educating yourself about what your situation is. And after educating yourself about your situation, then you can set up a plan as to how you want to go about your healing journey. Because just like anything, be it short-term, long-term, you have to have goals. And with healing and being intentional about your healing, you have to have a plan in place. Because I wish what I'm sharing now, someone would have told me versus me trying to figure all of this out on my own. But again, with me going through what I went through, and if I'm able to help someone, I'm for it. I will continue to go through these things in my life to continue to be able to help God's children, God's people. I will continue to be that vessel to experience these different experiences to help this world to be the world that I'm proud to live in versus a world that I would hate to be a part of, to say that exists. So research your specific traumatic event. After that, a plan. Third step, put it into motion. And those are 3 simple, realistic, short-term goals that anyone that's experiencing any type of traumatic event in their life that they can do for themselves without the assistance of anybody else, especially if they're not ready to address it. This is what they can do on their own. And if they start there, gradually, they will open up. And then their friends, loved ones will be able to aid them in that healing, because that's all that your loved one can do for you during this healing journey, is aid you in it. Because the work that has to be put in has to be done by that individual. And it's easier for the loved one to support and aid in that journey. But the hardest part is for the individual to start that. Now, like certain things, I understand my triggers, and recognizing your triggers are very important. And as they start that healing journey, they'll be able to recognize their triggers, because not understanding and not knowing your triggers can cause you to be in bed for a month, weeks, days. But when you understand it, you can move forward in a healthy and a productive and more meaningful way, not for anybody else, but for yourself. Because my healing journey and their healing journey, it's not for their family, it's not for their friends, it's for them to get on that other side of their life. And in that other side of their life, with their healing journey, is truly life. Because a portion of you is dead when you go through traumatic experiences. You're numb. You don't feel things. But when you start this journey, you're going to awaken things that you don't even know exist, because you've been so numb to it for all of this time that you've been in this place. And whatever in this place is for whomever it is, they would have to do the work and be ready to fight, because it's truly a fight of your life. Either you're gonna go out fighting, or you're gonna go out sinking. I'd rather go out fighting than sinking, because when you go sinking into your journey of healing, you're trying to heal for one thing. And because you attempted to do this, now you're drowning in the thoughts of, okay, I failed, I didn't do this. Other things added to it that's gonna weigh heavily on you. And hence again, those 3 steps is what I recommend, because I don't ever want anyone to go through that journey that I went through, that I experienced with the relapse, being ill because of me during this journey for others. And once I decided to do it for me, it was a fight for my life, but it was worth it. To get to this side of where I am right now, to so much better, to greater, I'm truly grateful for being able to stay in that fight, because, man, I got knocked down so many times, multiple times, where I just wanted to throw in the towel. I wanted to quit. But then going back to me telling you, if I had a choice to change anything in my life, if I had that option, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. My motivation are my husband, my children, my grandchildren, my parents, my siblings, and the people that look up to me. They are motivating factors for me not to give up or to give in when I felt like doing it. Even when I didn't feel like people should be looking up to me because I'm trying to navigate this stuff, they did. And that's another thing that we do because of unresolved trauma. We discount the difference that we make. We discount the value that we bring, and we shouldn't. But because no one ever sit down and talked to us about this and told us that life would be XYZ, this is why we go through all of this, because people don't share it. People are not transparent. People are not authentic. They're not an open book. They're open to what they want you to see. But I'm transparent because everything that was causing me my ultimate trauma was kept in the dark. I held on to it for years. So I'm not holding on to anything. I'm already vulnerable through Shining Light in Darkness, but transparent, authentic, genuine, real, open book, I am. Because I know what it is to be a closed book where you're just staying in that one chapter and still trying to live in everyday life. I will continue to be transparent until the day that I die, and I will continue this healing journey that I'm on until the day that I die, because every day is not a good day. Like I said, as you continue to heal, you continue to learn your triggers. What used to be your triggers are no longer your triggers. Now you have a new trigger that you never even knew existed. But because you're working on yourself to become that better version of you that you want to be for yourself, hence is putting in the work. This is an ongoing process. It doesn't stop after you start the healing journey. It's going to continue to be with you, and you have to continue to choose to move forward and not let a bad day overshadow the work that you've put in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And to recap your response, step one is to learn or relearn yourself.
No, step one, research whatever the traumatic experience it is that anybody may be going through. Research it to understand it. Step two, after understanding it, make a plan to set goals as to how you want to move forward. Now, after you've set those goals, step three, move forward. Those are the three simple goals. Because guess what? The only person that knows those goals or what you've written is you. So there is no one that you can disappoint other than yourself by not putting into action what you've already written down to move forward. So because it's, again, just you against yourself, you can do that versus having another body coming in and, okay, so Jay, you know about my plans, you know about my trauma, so this is my plan, and this is what I did to do next. That's different because you've involved somebody else into your next phase of your healing journey. And so if you don't come through on it, by every right, because you involved them, you're right. Florida. So have you done anything on your plan? For some, I could say yes, I could say no. And I could say no, and it could make me feel a certain way where I'm like, oh, why did I ever say anything? I should have just kept it to myself. So instead of beating yourself up, you do it that way. You just keep it between you and yourself until you're ready to involve someone else to aid, support you in your healing journey.
Got it. Got it. Well, do you have any lasting comments that you would like to say to your audience or to anybody listening? Anything that you...
It's the only thing that I will say to everyone is that my journey may not be your journey, but everybody have a journey, a road that they're traveling. And in that road, you're going to have obstacles, delays, derailments, and everything. But at the end of the day, you're not alone. You're not by yourself. What you are feeling or may have experienced with a traumatic event that has happened in your life or the life of a loved one, you're not alone. You don't have to suffer alone. You can reach out to anyone that you feel comfortable for support. Hey, if you need to, you can reach out to me. And however I can aid in that journey to support, encourage, and motivate you on this journey that we call life, I'm here. That is what I was put here to do. I support you. I believe in you. I'm cheering for you. And you got this.
Well, yeah, well, thank you so much. Well, Florida, or Flo, I've been calling you Florida, but Flo, thank you. You know, thank you for taking the time out of your day to have this conversation. I know that you're not one for interviews, so that definitely means a lot that you went out on a leap to have this. And most importantly, thank you for being vulnerable and being comfortable to share in such a manner during an interview at that. I truly hope that your story and how you went through your journey, even though it was personal to you, would motivate someone listening to do the same in their own way that works for them.
Absolutely.
You were very strong for this conversation, and your message was received on my end, and I learned a lot. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. All right. Very good.